At some point, I'm going to go on a deep dive on all the things that I've been seeing working with an AI system to build a production quality system. And let me tell you, it's gotten a little bit wacky. I mean, overall, my experience has been really good. So it's been, I'm very positive on it overall. But I'm trying to think for people who are not experienced coders, which is a lot of people, that, and that's not a knock, by the way. That's a lot of people now have started to use the AI coding systems with the idea in their head of what they want to build, but they don't have a background in computer science or writing code, this kind of thing. And what I've been trying to figure out is there a way for a person that isn't super experienced in software development, specifically someone that's never been formally trained on how to write code, can they use the AI coding systems not to build a one-off MVP, minimum viable product, or a demoware, but actually a truly iteratively refinable production quality system that they can continue to expand on in a reliable way? Since I'm of the mindset that the core challenge of software development is not building software that works. That's, as strange as this may sound, that's actually very easy. What's up, user? Let's keep testing this, and I'm going to be watching for disconnects. But as you can see here on this little dealie, this is looking pretty good, guys. Anyway, so as I'm doing this, I'm starting to figure out how to work with the AIs to actually get a software system that I can reliably iterate on. And I'm not exactly there, if I'm being honest. It gets stuck on strange things, and I keep nudging it. But the real challenge that I'm seeing is if I couldn't read the code, it's pretty tough to help it get unstuck or help course correct the bad design decisions that it's making. I would say that if you are an experienced dev, maybe let's rephrase this in a slightly different way. If you, hey, thanks. Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. What's going on, buddy? Yeah, do the lives. Actually, try to do live streams. I shoot for trying to do them every day, but I don't really get there. What I get to approximately, let's say, well, recently it's been the move, so that's interrupted stuff. But if I'm stable, I think I generally get 4 to 5 days a week. And at some point, once I get the studio fully locked down and things, I don't have a million different moving pieces, we will be streaming, live streaming 7 days a week. That is my goal. And I've got the time for it. I definitely want to do it. And I have big plans for GTT long term. Like, if you look at my history of doing things, once I set my mind to doing something, I'm going to make all kinds of mistakes, and I'm going to not know stuff. I'm not the knower of all things, and I'm going to run into just all kinds of stuff. But I generally don't quit. It's really, really rare for me to get to the point to where I kind of throw the towel in because I have become uninterested. I may have to throw the towel in for other reasons, but it's not generally going to be because I'm not willing to put in the effort. So my goal in life is that now that I've kind of figured out the foundations of how to do GTT in a consistent way, yeah, I've got big plans. I plan to do this as long as I'm capable of being able to speak coherently, and there are streaming platforms, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, and Ryan, we started initially on YouTube, and I made a bunch of mistakes, right? So we're actually like recreating the YouTube channel, Goju Tech Trek, or I don't know. It's still GDT. The algorithm is broken, basically. So even though we have a number of followers there, I got to be honest, I think maybe 90% of them are bots, honestly. Or YouTube just sucks with its algorithm, because we have like 1% of the following on IG than we do on the main YouTube channel, and IG gets considerably more engagement. It's the same content, right? So the YouTube algorithm is just hosed. And in fact, it's not just the same content, it's richer content, because on YouTube we have the long form VODs and we have the clips. On IG we just have the clips, basically. So anyway, that's on me. I think I screwed up the algorithm, and what I did is I did these YouTube promotions, and in the process of that, what I think it did is it steered the algorithm in the wrong way, and so the base audience is not correct. Whereas on IG and TikTok and some of these other ones, I didn't do basically any promotions, and so it's an organic growth that basically got the right. Yeah, Colin, something definitely is wacky with YouTube. I mean, the stuff that's like probably the most surprising is the difference in engagement on the clips that are identical on YouTube, TikTok, and IG. And both IG and TikTok have a similar-ish kind of virality on those clips, where YouTube, it's very strange. It's like consistently around an upper bound of maybe 10,000 views per clip, like almost for every clip. So it starts out and it's like 1,000 views, and then it climbs to, I don't know, maybe 10,000, and then it just flatlines. And it doesn't matter how much engagement it has. Whereas IG and TikTok, which I think is doing it the right way, you'll have some clips that's like, yeah, whatever, that's mediocre. Maybe get like a few thousand views or something. But then you have true virality on ones that people seem to really like, and those blow up in 500,000 views, or there's several that are over 100,000 views, completely organic. And keep in mind, we have literally 100x more subs on YouTube. So how is that possible? The only thing I can think of is probably two things: is that 90% of the followers that we have on YouTube are bots, and second, the YouTube algorithm is jacked. It's just off in La La Land, and I don't know how to course correct it. So the goal is creating the second channel that's completely organic growth, and hopefully the algorithm fixes itself for that channel. I guess we'll see. So we just created the Goju Tech Trek, and at some point I might just swap the names. So it'll still be called Goju Trek, just because that's shorter, easier to type than Goju Tech Talk. That's a lot of letters, more chances to screw it up. Whereas Goju Trek, yeah, I feel like that's... Anyway, point of all this is Ryan, yeah, we do lives and long form. And if you haven't seen those, I definitely recommend you check out the main channels on YouTube, because it has the saved live streams. Well, I wiped them at one point, but all the more recent ones, it pretty much has all the full recorded live streams, as well as it has the long form VODs that I cut up that I can't post on IG. These are sort of like a compressed version of the live stream that's maybe 30, 60 minutes or something like that. But yeah, great to have you. And one other thing that we have, which some of you may also not be aware of, is our Discord. And the Discord, I think, is basically the stomping ground for sort of the hardcore Jeets. And I just dropped that link all over the place. Yeah, it could be. I got to tell you, Ryan, just as an aside, I'm not loving some of the stuff that YouTube is doing. I honestly can't tell if YouTube is just kind of shadow banning me a little bit or not, because there are certain videos that I put out, like I just try to say what I honestly think. And I'm not saying what I think is right. I'm just saying this is kind of like what I honestly think at the time, based on the knowledge that I have. And my views are, let's talk about this a little bit. My views are not static. I actually think that anyone that has static views, where those views aren't constantly evolving and changing in light of new information, as a scientist, that doesn't make sense to me. Not that I really care what billionaires say, but Jeff Bezos once said, the true indication of someone's intelligence is how fast they adapt their opinions of things based on new evidence, new data. And what I think he means by this is we constantly are learning new things. And as we learn new things, those should, I think, inform and evolve our opinions on things. So, for example, before GTT, I was a very staunch advocate for object-oriented programming, and I basically believe C++ is the way to go. I know it's hard and all that stuff, but I think that there's a lot of power with it. However, in doing GDT, I've gotten some very interesting, deep conversations with other technical experts, and they've shared opinions with me that have evolved my way of thinking, and I can see now more clearly why some people really dislike OO. And what's interesting is that those views are not at all why I like OO. I actually agree with them on some of the things that they say and why they really don't like object-oriented programming. Like, one of those is massive inheritance trees. I totally agree with that. In general, you shouldn't do this. I've worked in code bases where they've created these ridiculously crazy inheritance trees. I think it was because they just first got classes. It was just all C before that. So you had functions and stuff. And so the idea of classes was new. It was fun. It was this flashy thing. And because of that, as engineers sometimes do, is they like to play with things. They want to poke around. And I love that. I'm all for meandering and tinkering. In fact, I think it's one of the best ways that you can get very comfortable with new things. It's just spending time with it, putting in the reps, right? But I don't do toy explorations in production quality systems. So I have a toy sandbox where I play with stuff. And then I have sort of the production stuff where there's a very hard line that says, this is Goju's playground. This is Goju's production quality systems that the world uses. And for things to migrate from the playground to production, there is a transformation that has to happen in the quality, right? Well, what these folks unfortunately did is they blended the two together. They had their playground and production, and it was all put into the blender and stirred up. And so you had a production quality system that had these crazy inheritance trees. And worse yet, they were using virtual inheritance. So it was doing polymorphism. And well, give me a second. There's like multiple types of polymorphism. There's it's basically like there's this, the easiest way to think about it is like it's static polymorphism and dynamic polymorphism. Static polymorphism is, these aren't exactly, it's like parametric polymorphism and something else. Parametric polymorphism, I need to look this up. But the higher order bit is this. The static polymorphism is like templates in C++. So what you do is you code a class or a function in a generic way. So it's like templatized. And then you instantiate an instance, an embodiment of that with different types. So you have a container class, and it takes a template parameter, which is the type of elements that it will contain. Integers, bools, strings, automobiles, whatever, right? And the reason why that's static is when you use C++ templates, they're still semi-strongly typed. And what that means is that that type and its compile time strongly typed. So what that means is it leverages the compiler to ensure that the types that you instantiate that template with actually will work with the system that exists. So if you instantiate this template class, that's your container, with an integer, it then goes through the function and says, can an integer actually process all of these operations? And so generally native types, things like ints, floats, bools, chars, and in some cases strings for modern languages, they'll work basically for almost any of the foundational operators, the core operators. But when you have user-defined types, UDTs, they won't necessarily work for those templates because some of the operators that you use in the template might not be defined for them. So for example, if you have an int and then you call the operator plus inside of the thing, right? So you do something like, oh yeah, that might have been a bad idea. But I'll just try to move this over here. So you have something like this. Something like this. So this template function that is called, we'll just call this sum. Oh, whoops, sorry. Okay, so essentially fully templatized, and you're templatizing on this type T. And for native types, this will generally work because they all have the plus operator defined. And that's the key thing that you need for this function to work. So when you instantiate this thing, you would do something like this, int x and y, and then some stuff happens. And then you say int z is equal to add this. And then that will compile. But it's doing this statically, and you leverage the compiler essentially to check all the rules. But if you did something like that might not work. And that might not work because when it calls into this function, it's going to get to this line of code, and then it may say, well, hold on, this plus operator doesn't exist for that. And the reason why I like this so much is what I try to do with software development is I try to offload as much work as I can to automated systems. Automated systems that I can leverage to find problems. And so they can do sanity checks, essentially, as much as possible. Now, you also have dynamic polymorphism. And dynamic polymorphism is you have essentially like a class that's being, a base class being passed into a function via pointer, and then inside of that function, it's going to do some stuff, but you don't know which class it is in this inheritance hierarchy. It could be the base class itself. It could be something above it. And as long as you keep the inheritance trees simple, it's not that bad. But once you start creating the inheritance trees where they have 10 levels of derivation, they're derived 10 levels high, and they're built so they use virtual functions where the virtual functions change their meaning for each of the different types of classes. This makes reasoning about those types of functions nearly impossible, because you're looking at the code and it's like, where is this? And this is different than static polymorphism, because even though static polymorphism, templates, essentially gives you the same behavior, the thing that you know about templates is the concrete type that is being used every time. So for example, in this code where I have the Goju object and I try to do this add, if it doesn't work, it tells me there's no plus operator defined for Goju object, and it won't even let the thing build. That's actually really good. Whereas the dynamic systems that use dynamic polymorphism, you generally only see those things at runtime. And as a really good software engineering practice, what you generally want to do just to make your life suck less is you want to push all of the runtime errors to compile time errors. Compile time errors you can fix with much faster velocity than you can for runtime errors. And the reason for that is as you try to compile the code, you can get a list of 100 things that broke. And in order to find the errors, all you have to do is just keep recompiling. But in order to fix them in runtime, you have to run the app, and then you have to get to the path where things are going to go sideways, and then see that it's gone sideways. Hope that you have a debugger that will let you walk through it, or you have the output that's telling you all the stuff. And then when you find it, you fix that one thing, and then You do the whole process all over again. So the time effort that you commit to this is significantly exacerbated. It's like way faster if you can push it to compile time. And so there's this really weird trade-off in software development where I think it's easier to learn programming as a new person using scripting languages that are weakly typed, that do things like dynamic type binding. And they basically kind of let you get away with a whole bunch of stuff that kind of doesn't make sense. And they kind of just sort it out for you. So you don't have to have perfect code. And this can be really helpful because you're trying to take baby steps forward, right? It's sort of like the difference again between learning how to ski versus learning how to snowboard. Learning how to ski, I think, is much more forgiving than learning how to snowboard, because with skiing, you can do the snowplow and you can kind of find ways to make it work, even if you kind of don't know what you're doing. But with snowboarding, either you have the fundamentals right a little bit, or you just keep falling down. You know, there's no poles. If you can't figure out how to get on an edge or balance your weight appropriately, you're kind of just, you're not really going to go anywhere. Whereas with skis, you can kind of just iteratively get better. And so you don't have this massive set of things you have to get right before you can even find it useful. So for learning programming languages and getting involved initially in software development, I'm a strong advocate of paths like Python, not JavaScript. And I'm not bashing on JavaScript coders, JS, TS. That's not what I'm doing here at all. I love you guys. You're amazing. And your UIs are changing the world, and that's wonderful. But it's a little too much of a free-for-all in my mind. It's so loose, and stuff feels like it's hard to explain, but let's just focus on Python for the moment. So with Python, you get a scripted language. You get a scripted language, too, that has objects or classes. So it's teaching you kind of the fundamentals of OO, but it's very lightweight and it's fully scripted. So you don't have the compiler things. It does gradual and dynamic type binding. So you don't have to get like all the types right exactly at code time. And then it will kind of figure out those things as much as it can at runtime. And that's great. So as a first step into programming, I absolutely agree that Python or something like Python is a much better choice for your first programming language. I almost wish that Python existed when I first started learning to code, and I learned that instead of whatever the heck I learned, which was like Pascal or C. And then after that, it was C++. So after you learn Python, though, I think the next thing is to work your way up to more challenging languages that have potentially more power, but they're harder to learn and to program in until you eventually get to something like C++. And the reason why I think C++ is kind of the pinnacle is that it's so extremely hard to get right that if you get to the point to where you can kind of master C++, then it's almost like through transitivity, you can master any other language, because C++ gives you, in order to get a lot of the stuff right, you have to know how to do a lot of things. You have to, like, maybe you have to deal with reference counting for pointers. Maybe you have to write your own memory manager, right? for socket connections, you have to deal directly with all the various errors that can happen and make sure that you clear buffers and all this stuff. But where was I going with this? Why was I talking about this? I have no idea. Hold on, let me. Okay, so we're talking about the type binding. Okay, I can't remember, but I want to go back to the. Oh, it was the learning. Okay, I remember now. It was the learning. So my conviction about the difficulty of the languages, I think that's still mostly intact, even after having deep discussions with many of the experts in the community that have come out and kind of challenged my views. And I love that because I think they've taught me many things. And I didn't realize that their definition of OO was basically, they see it as it's class hierarchy spaghetti code that no one can understand. And I feel like there was something else that there were like two things that they are staunchly against. And both of those things made sense to me. And that's not what I mean when I think of OO. When I think of OO as object-oriented programming, or OOP, but when I think about that, what I really think about it's the shift from structures to classes. And as I've mentioned in prior live streams, also prior VODs, the two major things that I think make OO very powerful over non-OO classes are interfaces and data encapsulation. That's why I'm so keen on OO languages. And the reason why I'm keen on those is, as someone that's built many production quality systems, some of them entirely from scratch, coding almost 100% of the system myself, what I can tell you is that my experience building these systems, as you start to get to large scale software, so you're moving out of the space of writing a program that is kind of easy to reason about and you can keep all the things in your head and you kind of know where all the stuff is, to a system that's so complex that it's not possible to have all of these things in your head and understand all the inner workings. OO helps you significantly. So it somewhat mandates, I mean, not exactly mandates, but it gives you a very elegant way, if you follow certain principles, to ensure you're building designs that are iteratively refinable. And my strong conviction, as I think I've mentioned many times, is one of the most important things for software, if you're trying to build software that's actually meaningful and has staying power. Again, it's not just a demo. I don't really like these flashy demos that look really interesting, but there's nothing behind the UI. Like there's no database and there's no real system. I am completely uninterested in those things. I don't build or work with people that build like vaporware or fakeware or whatever. And because of that, my primary focus is really on building real systems that then can benefit the world. And it's been my experience that building these real systems with OO, specifically having those two things in mind, make it like an order of magnitude easier when you make mistakes. And that's the key thing about programming, is that my view is one of the most important things of software systems is that the fundamental infrastructure is highly adaptable. It needs to be able to be iteratively refinable in as easy a way as possible, because no software system is perfect right out of the gate. And having the ability to quickly, iteratively refine, to explore different paths, will allow you the opportunity to do a whole bunch of things and explore the space. Whereas if it's everything's hard coded, as some of the vibe coding tools do today, you kind of get stuck. You like, it starts to do this implementation where it's burned into this one path. And then it kind of forbids you from being able to make changes to see other ideas. Like, one very simple example of this is when you hard code things. Like, it drives me crazy when people hard code literals into code. And the reason for that is they become kind of like magic numbers, or they become these very fixed things that doesn't allow you to try different stuff. And my strong conviction is that almost any hard-coded literal values have no business being in the actual operational part of the code. They can exist, but they should be in the data portions of the code. So what I mean is that if you have these constants or you have these strings, they should be like in a JSON file, or they should be constants that are not in the actual function directly. So you don't say x is equal to 7. You say x is equal to number of sockets, k number of sockets, and then that's defined as 7, where all the other constants are defined. And then what's great about this is, one, when you read that code, it says things like, it says this. Oops. And then somewhere down here, it says, now there may this dot dot dot, this could be 1,000 lines of code between these two things. If you just make x equal to 7 right out of the gate, nobody knows what 7 means. What does 7 mean? But if you set it to the k number of sockets, everybody knows immediately, oh, x is equal to the number of sockets. So the code is self-describing. And this is why oftentimes experts will say things that, like, I don't totally agree with this, but they'll say things like, you don't need documentation. The code itself is the documentation. Like, I think this is a little too hardcore. And I know oftentimes the people I hear this from are people that are just like, they are really seasoned coders. And so they absolutely know what they're doing, but they're not kind of remembering, I think, what it was like when they first learned how to code 20, 30 years ago, and how if they were told that, they would be completely confused. But I am a strong advocate for this type of coding, because everything is self-describing as much as possible. And then also, when you need to change things, right, like this to this, then you can. So just to help drive this point home, let's say that you have this, right? So you have the number of sockets and the number of ports, and they happen to be, just by coincidence, the same number. But now let's say that you didn't use this approach, and by the way, this is a very simple example, but this generalizes to the whole space of literals. So you just think about this and don't think about this one example. Just think about, okay, now we want this to be everywhere. All right. So you have these sockets and these ports. And let's say that you've hard coded 8 everywhere for all the sockets and you didn't create a constant for it. Then you have to go like do a find and replace to change all of the 8s to 9s, right? In this approach, you just change this one number. In this other approach, you go in and you change all the 8s to 9s. But when you do that, you change this number, and then you change that number. Well, you didn't want this other number to change. But because it didn't have an actual name that was bound to the real thing, to let them know that the 8 here means sockets and the 8 here meant ports, it doesn't know. And that's a nightmare. That is really, it is a royal pain to go through the code and have to pull in all of the context each time when you try to make these changes. And so you save yourself significant time. I mean, take it from someone that has made this mistake early in their career, and I had to do massive refactoring, and it was a nightmare. That's why I'm so staunch on these things, is basically I'm trying to save you guys from all the pain and heartache that I experienced because I did it the wrong way. Because I was a bit of a dum-dum and didn't... Let's see if I can expand this so I can get more. Yeah. I made some changes on... Anyway. So the whole point of all this is... Boy, I'm really meandering. Is this idea of new information. And so in the process of having discussions about OO, on some of the VODs, people pushed back and said, I totally disagree with you, Goju. I think C is great, but I think C++ sucks. And I wanted to understand because I thought these were smart people and I don't think they were trolling me. I think they really were trying to say something. So then they started to explain. You know, I basically asked them, can you elaborate what you're saying here? Because I think you're saying something important, but I don't understand. And then they explained, oh, well, when you do these massive inheritance hierarchies, it goes sideways. And because C++ and other OO languages force you to use classes, just to be clear, C++ doesn't force you, but Java does, right? And other very strict OO languages. By the way, this is also the reason why I actually prefer C++ to Java, is I think Java is actually pretty cool, and it has many benefits in spaces like enterprise and security. 100%. But I do think it's a little strict in that everything has to be a class, because sometimes I don't need a class. And also that everything has to be a method. Sometimes I don't need a method. I just need a function. It's like a Goldilocks zone. So through those discussions, what happened is I started to understand their perspective and my views changed. And I don't think that that's bad. I think that's actually good. I think that when your views change in light of new information, that demonstrates that you are a very logical, reasonable person. And me being a scientist first and foremost over anything else, it's been my experience that all of the really world-class scientists, they all do this. Even if it means some of their fundamental beliefs in the research they've been working on are challenged in a way, but challenged honestly, right? Not being intellectually dishonest and trying to argue why this doesn't work for basically pretend reasons. Because you can basically put very intelligent people can punch holes into almost anything. But having things be not 100% correct is not necessarily a reason to throw it out. And it's been my experience that nothing is really perfect, right? Like think about your partner, or think about your parents, or your best friend. They're not perfect. They've got their own quirks. Does it mean you throw them away because they're not perfect? No, because mostly they're pretty awesome. And then they're a work in progress, and then you work with them, hopefully, if they're introspective and coachable and not highly defensive, then you can kind of like make forward progress. And based on my 51 years of being alive, I have never seen perfection, and I don't know that I'm ever going to see perfection. And I actually like it that way because it gives us something to work toward constantly. So, yeah, this is actually, just as an aside, it's almost like a deal breaker for me with people that want to work with me. If someone wants to work with me and I see that they don't have the ability to be intellectually honest and introspective, I don't care how smart they are, how much they know. If they are of the mindset that they know everything and they're above growing, I literally will more likely than not work with that person. Simply because I think that's a very naive and narrow way of thinking. And no matter how awesome someone is, if they're fixed in their growth, they take it a static way. Someone that is 1% as knowledgeable as that person at some moment in time, but they have a growth mindset, eventually the person with the growth mindset will eclipse the other person that's static. Also, just speaking generally, I think that people that kind of know everything, they tend to be like major pains in the ass to work with. They're hard to talk to because they speak in kind of like black and white language. Even if their intentions are wholesome, like it's very hard to like, we must do this, or that's wrong. Like, really? Like, must we do this? Or is it more like that's a possibility? And is it wrong? Or is it simply could use improvement? Right? There's a way to communicate ideas more gracefully and also with more precisional nuance. Like, weakly qualified claims tend to be more precise than strong unqualified claims. But I think some people that are kind of these staunch stick in the muds, they take these uncompromising views, and I don't love it. It's not great. So that was a really long meandering on the whole growth thing, but I talk about this a lot, and part of the reason why I talk about this so much is I think there's a lot of confusion, or at least there was a lot of confusion for me as I was trying to... Yeah, so what you were saying, Brian, here on stubborn beliefs are a dead end, I feel is very much how I believe, is if you have someone, there's this saying that you can't reason someone out of a position that they didn't reason themselves into. And what I mean by that is generally the way I reach my beliefs are through logic and reason. I think about it. I think, does this make sense? And then if it makes sense to me, then I do it. I'm not a parrot. I don't just, I'm not just spoon-fed stuff and I just drink the Kool-Aid that's given to me. I question it, and then, and I question it. What I try to do is question it with an open heart and with an open mind. I question it not with the intent of rejecting it, but with the intent of understanding it. And I think this is a very different thing. There's like people that question things that it's almost like they're questioning it just so they can find something wrong so they can reject it. Because they already know that they don't want to believe this thing. And so now all they're looking for is just one thing that they can push back on and say it's wrong. That would be the people that are, I think, hardline defiant against C++ and say C++ is a broken language because it allows for multiple inheritance and like unending inheritance trees. Right. Look, I agree. That's actually the essence of that, I think, is right. I don't love massive inheritance trees. I think they're very confusing, and I don't know how to solve that necessarily, but I do think that it's a bit crazy. But I don't think that that means C++ is a broken language. Like, that conclusion is too... You're at step one of demonstrating a single problem with the language, and then you jump to like step 1000 on let's close the book on this language because it allows for this one thing. Like, really? Okay, we could do that then for almost any language. I could do it for Java. I could say, well, Java's out because everything must be a class, right? Okay, there's a reason to reject that. JavaScript is out because the var and let statements, I think, are inverted, and it confuses the heck out of everybody, and I just don't love that. So JavaScript and TypeScript are out. Python is out because it does dynamic type binding, and you can't like leverage a compiler. On top of that, I think they used to have, or they may still have, this sort of single global lock thing, coarse grained lock when they're trying to do things, and then that's going to slow down the performance. So Python's out, right? And you can literally just go through every language, find one problem, and if your goal is perfection, every language is rejected now. It's very naive. That's not how the real world works. That's how ideologues work. And being an ideologue in my mind is not a great way to live, because all you end up doing basically is rejecting everything, and then you kind of make no forward progress on anything. You just sit around and you become that grumpy person that's like, well, that's not going to work. Oh, that's not going to work. Oh, that's not going to work. And at least for me personally, that's not how I spend my time. I like to spend my time on thinking about all the things that we can do, all the things that are possible to do. The world as a sea of opportunity, not as a sea of bad people with bad intentions. And I also have a very strong conviction about the world is how you choose to see it. That if you decide that the world is made up of evil, malintent people, you can do this process of second guessing or questioning everyone's motives and find that they did one thing wrong, even if you misunderstood it, and then write them off because like, oh, you did this one thing that one time, right? I know you're a bad actor. You're done. Because we're all human. We all make mistakes, right? Like, for example, I started this stream and my internet was pretty jacked, and somebody could decide, oh, Goju's a clown because he goes live and he has no idea what he's doing, and it takes him an hour to get his streams working. What an idiot. They wouldn't be wrong, right? I am an idiot, and I love that because it gives me the opportunity to learn constantly. I don't want to be known as the guy that knows everything. One, because I don't know everything, and two, because it allows me the opportunity to constantly grow. I want that because I care more about growth than I'll ever care about being right. And those things sometimes can be mutually exclusive, as you guys have probably seen. The person that is staunchly concerned with how right they are, which is just insecurity, right? Veiled as arrogance, but really it's just they have low self-esteem. And then the people I think that are very willing to be introspective and openly acknowledge or even add a preamble that they don't have all the answers, what I find is those people tend to be some of the best people to be around because they are constantly growing. They are listening. They are learning from other people. Like, for example, the other night we were on the stream and Colin asked right out of the gate, "Hey, Goju, what do you think about the GitHub thing?" I could be a total ficya. Ficya is a freaking know-it-all, and then say, "Oh yeah, the GitHub thing doesn't matter." But truthfully, I didn't know what he was talking about because I'm not the knower of all things. And so I said, "What GitHub thing are we talking about here? Did I miss it?" And then I did a deep dive in it, and then holy cow, it actually changed the direction of the things I was working on because I was open to new knowledge, because I was okay saying I don't know something because I'm not the knower of all things. And that, I think that in my mind, that is actually what quiet confidence looks like. That narcissism and arrogance are loud. Confidence is quiet. Because you don't need to broadcast all the things. You don't need other people to give you external validation. You just are okay with being you. And it's not that you're right about everything. It's not that you're the knower of all things. It's just that you understand that I'm okay being me. And I'm not perfect, but I try to get better every day. And I'm open to learning new things. And I'm willing to put in the work. If you have those qualities, those are game-changing qualities in my mind. Like, those are the kinds of people that I want to work with. People actually like Colin. Colin's on the stream right now, and he's undergrad computer science. He's early in his career, but he has all the right foundational elements that make it very easy to work with him. Very little ego, if no ego at all. Highly introspective, constantly trying to learn, and actively wants to make the world a better place. Like, absolutely. Oh, and not also money hungry, greedy, whatever. Okay, so I'm really going off, but I want to go back to the YouTube algorithm and share something with you guys, which is just more of the like, I don't know, there's a conspiracy and stuff. So I try very hard to just be honest on how I really see things, despite whatever blowback I'm going to get. And for a long time, I couldn't do that because when I was in big tech and I worked at Intel, I couldn't say how messed up some of the things that Microsoft or Google or even Intel were doing because I would get into a lot of trouble. But now I'm not beholden to those masters, and I can say what I really want and have been wanting to say for a while. Now, I'm always trying to truthfully be fair and not go after people. For example, I think I love GitHub. Absolutely love GitHub. I love these guys. I know many of the people that run GitHub. Literally, I think I have them on speed dial. They're really good people. But they made a mistake. That GitHub internal repo leak of 3,800 repos, based on the knowledge that I have today, that could have been completely avoided. if they would have just put in the proper security guardrails that I've mentioned in the last live stream. And the one big one is having auto updates turned off. It's a very simple thing. It's a very common, well-known security practice. There's really no reason why GitHub shouldn't have that in place. The only reason, really, to have something like this not in place is, let me say, there's two main reasons why you wouldn't do this. The first is you wouldn't do it because it's more work. When you turn auto updates off, you still need to make sure that you're getting updates to the software. And that means now that you have to have a team of people, or at least one person, that's looking at the updates, sending them through a vetting process, making sure you have staggered integration points, and then deliver that to the employees, right? That job didn't exist if you just have auto updates on. So again, just trying to be fair and tell the whole story. It's much easier to keep everybody current if auto updates are turned on. But it also exposes you to an incredible amount of danger that you don't need to be exposed to. It also does have a slight side effect, is that you have a staggered upgrade policy, which means you will never be exactly on the current version of the latest release. This is part of the process. You have to be willing to accept this. And what that basically means is your competition could potentially be working with things that you don't have access to, and that may give them an edge. But keep in mind, this is only, like, I'm talking about a release version. I'm not talking about a whole a massive version change. I'm not talking about being on Windows 10 and then Windows 11 comes out and you're like, nope, we can't upgrade to it because we have to stay a full version behind. And then Windows 12 comes out and then you go to Windows 11. That's not what I'm talking about at all. I'm talking about the release versions. So these are like the release candidates and things like this, is that you'll get these releases that will come, at least in the ML world today, they're coming at a cadence of about almost like once a month. And so what that means is you'll be about 1 month behind everybody else. But what that also means is that you're not in the front line where you're taking fire directly from all the hackers. You're 1 row or 2 rows behind that. The safety benefits, the security benefits of just having that minor separation, being slightly behind, is enormous. It is like a game changer. I think, and knock on wood about this, I think in the almost 30 years that I've been doing software, I think I've only gotten myself infected, let's say like 1 or 2 times. And in both cases, it was my fault for not following rules like this. It was my fault. I knew doing the thing was going to put me at risk, and I did it anyway, and then I got owned. And it sucked both times. I mean, it royally sucks. Like, look at GitHub's state right now. All they had to do was just follow this principle, turn auto updates off, and then they would be slightly behind. They would have more work, but they would... I want to show you guys something on this article that they wrote, because I thought it was very interesting. But then all of the stuff that's going on right now, the stuff where they have 3,800 repos that have been hacked. And guys, this is just the beginning. And I'm not saying that for fear mongering. I'm saying that I'm getting a sense of what Team PCP is capable of. And these guys are masterminds. This is like, they're on the level of like Anonymous. These are dudes you do not want to mess with. They're just like the 190 IQ crowd, and they have all the right behaviors. These are not script kiddies. And so they absolutely know exactly what they're doing. And it's my suspicion that with the access to those 3,800 repos, there's going to be significant fallout on this. Now, GitHub can't say this, right? They can't say this publicly because they have to posture a little bit and basically say, yes, this did happen, but don't worry, everybody, it's fully contained. And then also, they can't look like they're a bunch of idiots that don't know what they're doing. They have to essentially find a way to share this narrative in a way that makes them look like they didn't really make a mistake, but they did. They did make a very big and real mistake. But if you look at the way that they position this is like their head security guy or whatever. And again, they're just, a lot of them are buddies, right? So these guys are probably not going to openly criticize GitHub, not like the way that I will, because I'm not beholden to anybody. And the only people that I'm like maybe a little bit beholden to is Stanford, and Stanford knows that I kind of function in the space of intellectual and creative freedom. As long as I'm not saying something egregiously wrong, I can share my honest opinions, even if they're critical of Stanford itself, and that's not going to put my position there at risk. Like that's a lot of the reasons why very, very intelligent people that care more about meaningfulness than money end up being like professors, is they want to be able to say and do what they want without retribution from other institutes. And you generally cannot get this, not completely, in industry. I certainly couldn't say the things that I say now if I was still at Intel and a spokesperson for Intel. There's no way. Like, just to give you a concrete example, when I was a spokesperson at Intel from 2019 maybe to the end of 2021, so maybe about 2 years, every single social media and legacy media interaction was monitored. Every single one. So I literally had an entire team of, well, it's like my entourage, but they weren't really my entourage. It was more just they were the comms people that would provide oversight constantly to make sure I didn't step out of line. I didn't accidentally say the wrong thing. So literally, if I'm on calls with the New York Times or Wall Street Journal, they're there. When I'm doing an interview in person with someone else, they're there. And anytime I post anything on social media, they see it immediately. And if anything is even borderline calling into question some of the partners or people that we'd work with, it couldn't be posted. There was like something where I was going to say something about United Airlines that, as you guys know, I absolutely love dogs. And United Airlines at one point had this thing where there was a dog that was put something like in the overhead bin, right? Because it was like it wouldn't fit under the seat, but it would fit in the overhead bin in, the dog case. And the lady that had it was like, this, no way, as my dog. Anyway, they demanded it, and so the dog went up there, and the dog didn't survive the flight. It didn't have enough air So I can't remember all the details. You can look this up and see about this. This actually happened, I don't know, maybe 5, 6 years ago, something like this. And I was outraged. I was really not happy because that was a choice that United Airlines made, and they put like their rules at a higher priority than the life of this animal. And I find that completely unacceptable. It's just no way. If that was my dog and they were doing that, I would have either told them to go F themselves, or I literally would have gotten off that plane. Because, you know, I love dogs and I love animals. So anyway, this happened and I was really not happy. And I posted something about it on LinkedIn. I basically said, United Airlines did this. Here's the article. I find this unacceptable. And I did like a hashtag ban United. 5 minutes later, my comms team was on the phone with me saying, Goju, well, it was before Goju, so Justin, delete that post. Like, they didn't even have to say, you know, that thing you post on, like they're so on top of all these things and we're monitoring that even something that was calling out a company that clearly did something that was unethical and is just not correct because there was some relationship. I can't remember. Intel was doing some work with United. They helped them with their processors or who knows what, right? Even things like that I couldn't say. So a lot of the folks that are at places like GitHub or Microsoft, Oracle, Google, so on and so forth, they have similar views to what we have, but they're beholden. They cannot speak out. Like literally, I've had conversations with these folks. Some of them, again, are my very good friends. And they're like, well, what I really think is this. But if I say that, I'm going to get fired. And so I'll say, I hear you, bro. That sucks. I'm not going to get fired if I say it. So then I say it, right? So with that in context, I want to take a look at this little snippet that I added for one of the most recent clips. So they say this is about the GitHub internal repos being hacked. According to Aikido security researcher Charlie Erickson, VS Code extensions have full access to all data on developer machines, including credentials, SSH keys, cloud keys, and all other secrets. Yikes. Just right there, yikes. But that's not actually true. This is not true. What it really is that there is a workplace security flag inside of VS Code. Give me 1 second. Workplace-trust. All right. Inside of Visual Studio Code, there is this thing called workspace-trust. If this is enabled, then anytime VS Code is going to try to access things that are not within the range of trusted stuff, it has to ask you permission. But by default, Cursor ships with workspace-trust disabled. Awesome. Fantastic. Cursor disables it to ensure AI features and other tools work without interruption. You are being opted in without your permission. It does it silently. And unless you know, which a lot of people don't know because they don't sit around and spend their entire day analyzing all the aspects and details of all these things like I do. So the majority of people don't know these things, and then they end up getting owned because Cursor chose to make a decision to put you at risk because it allows their stuff to function with more in a more frictionless way. This is a terrible decision in my mind. And this is why I did the VOD on you should stop using Cursor now. Goju, stop using Cursor now. Right here, this one. Hi, everybody. This video. Stop using Cursor now. Critical security vulnerability discovered. This is when I figured out that this BS was being done by Cursor. And I want to also be clear that Cursor was made aware by this security team, Oasis Security, and told them that you are putting many people at risk by disabling this. It should be an opt-in choice. It should not be opt-out. And Cursor told them, take a hike. We're going to do it this way anyway. So this is not ignorance. It's not that they didn't know. And now they know and they're like, oh, shoot, we got to change this. No, they knew. And they're openly choosing to put you at risk or any people that's using Cursor at risk just so it can look and feel and do all the whatever stuff a little bit faster. This is why we have to sandbox this stuff, right? Like, I really need to do that Hostinger video. It is on my plan. It's on my agenda for today or tomorrow. That I'm actually going to work on the script for it with Claude after this, and then I'm probably going to make sure I learn all the stuff, and then I'll start recording it. I think I'm going to do it offline, just so because I may be putting in like credit card information and stuff because I want to walk through the actual full process so you can see how to get fully sandboxed. But this is one of dozens or hundreds examples of why we really need to be sandboxed, is that you have these companies that, because of this AI rat race that we're in, caution is being thrown to the wind, and so everybody is drinking the Kool-Aid and making ridiculously dumb decisions. Like I realize that I'm coming in maybe a little bit hot, but it doesn't even make sense. These things that are the known trusted ways to do things, it's like literally we're living in a flat earther movement because everybody has sort of collectively lost their minds and are doing things that knowingly are putting us at risk. And that's why so many of these hacks are happening, why so many people are getting owned. You go back to the GitHub thing, is that all they needed to do was just disable auto updates, be 1 or 2 versions behind, and that 18-minute window of the NX console being online in Microsoft Visual VS Code's marketplace, they wouldn't have been infected. because it was taken down so fast that they never would have even seen it. But because they made this one simple mistake, 3,800 repos were stolen based on what Team PCP is saying. And there's going to be more fallout from this. Like that is the part that I'm the most concerned about now. Is we've got the fix essentially to make sure this doesn't happen to you, and that's very simple. Just turn auto updates off in VS Code, and then this type of thing won't happen. The problem is it's not just VS Code. It's right, like, and so this is a good example. Is both of these are VS Code. One of these is disabling the auto updates. The second is making sure that the workspace security is turned on. And by default, both of these things are set up the wrong way. They're set up for speed. They're not set up for security. And no, I mean, going a little bit faster and risking your entire machine, I think that that's wildly naive. And I do think that the way Claude does this, Claude Code does this, is far better. Is you do not get into auto mode, or at least my experience with this. With Claude Code, CLI, you do not enter auto mode where it's a free-for-all by default. You have to tell it to go into auto mode, and then like it doubles down and says, do you really want to do this? Because you're about ready to give Cursor full access to your machine and it can do really bad things. You may not want to do this. And then you have to basically say, no, I really want to do it. Freaking do it, Claude. And then it does it. And so, for example, I run in auto mode, but I also am guarded on the range of things it can do. It does not have unlimited access. It has no OAuth permissions at all. None. I will not give it any sort of MCP OAuth. And even when it's sandboxed, I won't do this. But I will allow it to run in auto mode, and I will let it access whatever folders I've given it permission ahead of time for. And this is probably the most important thing, everything is backed up constantly. I am committing and updating to my GitHub repos, and then I have Google Drive for the VODs. So everything is backed up in multiple different locations that are authorized. Well, Google Drive is only authorized by me. GitHub is authorized by them. And the truth is, I am at risk, just to be totally intellectually honest, I am at risk because Claude Code could accidentally wipe that entire repo. I could still probably get it back by doing like a recovery mode for the repo, but now that we talk about it, I probably need an additional security measure in there. And I got to tell you, there's a few times where Claude has gone rogue. I mean, not really, but it did what I asked it to do, but it just didn't do it in a smart way. Like I had a VOD that it wasn't properly editing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I was looking at it and I was like, you know, you messed this part out. Please redo this and make a new MP4 that fixes this. In the past, what it's done is it will do just that. It makes a new version of this thing, and then it's a copy. But in this particular case, for some reason, it decided to make those changes and overwrite the original. The problem is, I was working with that original copy in Wondershare or whatever, and so my project was axed, and that wasn't super great. And I only lost maybe 15 minutes of work and stuff, but so even Claude has gone rogue on me and done stuff where it's not wrong per se. It's trying to fulfill the instructions, but it's not being smart about it, right? So this whole backup thing, having constant points of backup and things of that variety, you have to do this. You sandboxing by itself is not sufficient. You have to have the backups. It's good to have distributed backups. So you don't just you don't just have the repo where it has like the existing code. You have a secondary repo that's separate from the main one that is like the weekly or monthly checkpoint. So then if the AI happens to go rogue and it wipes out that repo, you have the second one that it does not have access to. So even if it tried, it's not OAuth to get in there, and then you're good. So there are layering techniques of things that you need to do to get the sandboxing set up. I'm going to go through all of these in the Hostinger video. Like it even goes as far as if you want to get like really, really locked down, you actually have to create a new account on things like Gmail or Apple that's separate from your main one. So you don't actually do OAuth through MCP that then gives it access to your stuff, and then it can daisy chain, right? So, I mean, they're sort of like this is the perfect sandboxed environment way, and you are going to go slower and all this stuff, but it's like almost guaranteed that no matter what happens, you will be fine. And then there's kind of like the other end of the spectrum where you're going to be safe for the majority of things because it's sandboxed, but you're not going to do like all the stuff because it's just a lot of stuff perhaps. And then you can decide, right? So it's sort of like, I'll try to give the spectrum of here's the minimal amount of effort you need to put forward to get this sandboxed on a VPS. And then here's the full strength, like let's go nuts and be almost like it would be this classified top secret thing where there's like a 0.001% chance that any amount of rogueness that it took would be able to wipe you out. Yeah. All right. I've been monologuing for a while, so I want to stop, but there's one more thing I have to say, and then I want to read some of the comments. I was saying that these guys are kind of like not telling the whole truth, so let's read this. So the security researcher basically said VS Code extensions have full access to all that. So that's the first thing that's like not actually true. And the reason why they can't say this is they're taking a shortcut by having workplace security turned off. And then because it's turned off, this stuff is true. But it doesn't have to be. Then let's continue. So developer workstations are the #1 target in supply chain attacks right now. And this is exactly why. That's true. That is exactly right. Because workplace security is turned off by default by these folks at Cursor and other places, then developers are putting themselves at significant risk, and they are the #1 target for these supply chain attacks. 100%, that is true. Team PCP has compromised all of these other folks, and now GitHub, all in 2026. Think about that for a second. This is not the full list. Like OpenAI is in there. I think I saw Perplexity in there. It's a much bigger list than just this. And that is all just in the first 5 months of the year. These guys are just getting started. All through developer tooling. 100% is developer tooling. And again, the big reason why is that the AI race has changed the rules on awesome. That's great to know. So the AI race is going to change the rules that were understood and followed by the general community for decades. And because now we're all speedrunning life, which is so stupid in my mind, because the consequences are so severe. And what do you save? Like a small amount of time? Like it's just, I don't understand the risk reward trade-off here. So now let's continue. This is the part where this is a little bit bullshit. A single VS Code extension on one employee's machine was enough to get access to 3,800 internal GitHub repositories. Most security teams still have zero visibility into what extensions or packages are on their developer's machine or how recently they were published. That's a blind spot these attacks keep walking through. That's false. That is false. That is not correct. And the reason why this is not correct is that you can and you should have visibility into those development environments, and teams that are like deeply buttoned up that care about security first and foremost. It is controlled. It is a staggered distribution of the updates. It's slightly delayed, and it does all the stuff that we've been talking about. The reason why they have zero visibility is that they've decided that the developers can just do all the stuff. So it used to not necessarily be this way, is you had to go through a process, and I understand the process could slow things down for sure. And so you'd have to get clearance of like, can I install this? And, you know, that may take a little while. And so it may like just make you slightly not as fast. But that's not even the real problem. That is not the actual real problem, not in this case. It actually has nothing to do with the extension or the package. What it has to do with is auto updates being on. That's the real problem. Is you can have whatever extensions and packages that you want on your machine, because most of them are going to be security analyzed. Like this is software that generally you can analyze for security issues, and it will be, and then it will be deemed safe, and you're good. And then with auto updates turned off, when malicious things like this happen, you catch them before they actually infect people's machines. They get triaged and remediated, and then once it's safe and they've had time to burn in, like a week or two or whatever it takes, then the developers update. That's the actual problem. And I'm not sure why Jackson is not calling this out, given that he's from this security. But if I'm being honest, this is my 100% honest Goju take. I think that he's not. I'm assuming that he's a hyper intelligent person, because I think he probably is. But I think that he's not saying this because he doesn't want GitHub to be publicly humiliated. It's the same thing here, is that, again, if he tells the truth here, then they're going to potentially burn bridges with other folks. If he directly calls out Cursor and other folks that have workplace security turned off, he's going to make enemies. And then there's going to be retribution. But if he says that VS Code extensions just have all this access by default, then nobody's to blame, right? It's just a setting. That's not actually what's going on. Is that it's a choice by these different forks of VS Code, right? The 10,000 forks that exist where people are wrapping VS Code in something, and then they're disabling it. But he's essentially circumnavigating that. So he's doing it once here, and then he's doing it once here. This one, if he specifically says this could have been avoided entirely if GitHub had auto updates turned off, then he's going to make GitHub look like they are a bunch of idiots for not doing this. And then he's probably going to burn a bridge with GitHub. But I don't really care about that. What I care about is making sure that you guys know the truth. And this is the kind of stuff that, like, this is why GTT was, oh, Silver Surfer, what's going on, man? This is like one of my favorite all-time characters in Marvel. So my goal with GTT is I don't know that I care if I piss off any big tech company. And even though I have friends at GitHub and I love these guys, the truth is it was a mistake to do this. And my hope is that they're reasonable people and know that me telling the truth and telling all of you, just like the stuff I was saying about Hugging Face, is if you make a really clear mistake in judgment, I'm going to call it out. And I don't mean it to be mean. I'm not trying to burn a bridge with anybody, but it's more important that all of you know what really is going on here, because some of this stuff is actually very easy to avoid, right? Like the way Jackson is describing it is this is like an impossibility problem. How do we deal with this? It's just like, oh, VS Code extensions have this. Like, wow, we got to rethink the whole framework. No, we don't. Just keep workplace security on. That's solved. And then this other thing, it's like, oh man, you got all these extensions and it's free for all. Like nobody knows. Like it can't be fixed. Yes, it can. Keep auto updates off. Both completely solvable in very simple ways. Just not telling the whole truth. And I don't love that. But at least you guys know, and please do share this with all of your developer friends. He is right that developers are the #1 target, and supply chain attacks are where it's at. Like, we are going to see an onslaught, I believe, of supply chain attacks, specifically through NPM and various other things. They're going to be copycat clones, like we were talking about before, and I'm of the mindset that Team PCP already has, I would speculate, a dozen or dozens of hacks that probably are already in the system and they're just waiting to be executed on. They're just kind of sitting on it because these guys are patient and they're methodical. They're like, this is an elite hacking group that absolutely knows what they're doing. The last thing I want to say about this is somebody DM'd me and was asking this question, if it's safe for them to push a PR on GitHub. So after we did this original thing, there are people that are reaching out asking about all the different potential problems. And I got to be honest, I hadn't actually thought that deeply about it. I was only starting to get into this. And then when he mentioned this actually caused me to pause and try to think about this a little bit more clearly. And one of the things that is likely going to be a growing target attack is GitHub Actions. I think some of them are already happening right now, but GitHub Actions are like SQL injections. Because like with SQL injections, you can sort of put something in there that can be executed and it can do various things with your database. GitHub Actions are the same thing, is that it's a blank canvas. That's the way to think about it if you're not familiar with GitHub Actions. Basically, GitHub Actions, which is a very cool advanced thing, and we use GitHub Actions. It's very powerful. It basically is like this embedded scripting environment. Kind of think of it as like a batch file or a shell script, but directly with GitHub. And so you use it for things related to CI/CD. So you get an integration on some software change, and then from that, you want to do things like trigger that this is going to run all the tests. Or in this case, what Mentor does is when it's integrated in the CI/CD pipeline, the GitHub Actions will invoke Mentor to run inference on the code that was just committed, right? So it's very powerful, and it's like a lot of people use it. But it's because of its power and the fact that I don't know what security checks are in there. I think that that's another area that the hackers are going to exploit. I don't have any advice yet on how to stop that. I need more time to think about it. Obviously, one safe way to deal with this is to basically just disable GitHub Actions from being triggerable on any commits, right? So let me walk you through the scenario. Is let's say Team PCP has hacked these internal repos, GitHub repos, and through that, there's some way that they can inject malicious actions in things that you may be interacting with on GitHub. Again, this is purely speculative. I have no idea if this is actually happening or not, or if it will happen. But given that they have the source code now for these 3,800 repos, this is the pathway to copycat clones. Copycat clones become significantly easier to do if you have the original source code, because you can make the lookalike identical to the original, except now you've added some stuff that does some bad things. So what I would do in this case is I would try to find an internal repo that people rely on constantly. Like maybe it's the thing that does the PR requests or the PR handling. Maybe it's the thing to do automated testing, right? Whatever it is, I would try to hijack this and then put my malicious version in place. And then from there, I wouldn't rely on the malicious hack itself, because it's easy to do a security analysis on code. It's much harder to do security analysis when you daisy chain it and you keep it contextually separate, right? So what I would do is, in that malicious thing that I've hacked, I would find a way to pull in some text file or something that gets turned into GitHub Actions, and it injects a new script of GitHub Actions, which then does whatever the hell I want it to do, including copying the whole repo and then sending that repo to me. I think that this type of stuff is possible with GitHub Actions. Again, part of what makes this so clever is if you do it this way, what you could do is you could literally have an encrypted tarball file that's part of your malicious hack that the security system would not be able to analyze because it's encrypted. And then in the malicious code that you've put in the system, it would then call the thing that unencrypts the file, right? And that's going to pass a security check, because unencrypting things there's nothing strange about that. Then once it's unencrypted, you have the things that's going to inject in the GitHub Actions, and then it pulls that in, drops in GitHub Actions, and then they're owned. Notice that you can't do a security analysis on this because, one, the code itself isn't doing something that's obviously malicious, right? You don't have signatures in code that could be scanned for. Like that's a big part of this hack, is you want to have the hack itself be undetectable by security scanning software. It's very much like the XZ-Utils backdoor hack. The way they did that is they made it in the testing, and so people, one, are looking at test code with significantly less scrutiny than they are with the normal code. And then on top of that, what they did, because these guys were also super clever, this is the Geotan thing. They had an encrypted tarball file that had object code in it that then when you were deploying XZ-Utils and you were building it and integrating it into a Linux system, which is very common for like advanced developers, what it would do is as it's building out that library, it would then unencrypt the tarball file. It would take sections of the object code that's in it, insert it directly into the binary that's being built. And then when it's linked, now you have a malicious XZ-Utils library. Again, it's very advanced stuff. This is like, if you don't have a PhD in this, or you haven't spent a very long amount of time in it, it's very hard to understand. But this is the type of sophistication. And what's super nefarious about this is you can't detect the XZ-Utils security breach in the code itself because it's not in the code. There's no code footprint that could be analyzed to detect this. It's in an uploaded encrypted tarball file. And then even if you unencrypted it, all you would see would just be object code. And while you could probably reverse engineer to understand the object code, I mean, this is like really, really hard stuff. Anyway. Yeah, I think I've meandered and said all I'm going to say about that. Now let's look at some of the comments and then maybe wrap up for the night. Oh, and before they do that, let's check to see our internet speed. Let's see if we're still rocking with these. Oh boy, we are rocking, guys. Mm-hmm. It's looking pretty good. Okay. Excellent. I'm really glad we got this kind of figured out. All right, so let's start with IG and see what we got. Oh, by the way, I appreciate all of you guys joining. The numbers here are not being updated. Let's actually see if I can get this to update properly. I can see from OBS that there's like 15 or so people on YouTube. And oh, no worries. Yeah, this is all going to go into VOD anyway, so yeah, and appreciate you hopping on, Colin. Speaking of which, Colin, what are you doing up this late? I'm up this late because I got up super early yesterday and I was fried by, I think, 5 p.m. And then I slept my normal 5 hours or something. And then my body is like, you've slept enough. You need to get back to work. I want to just quickly look at what Freddie's saying. He's got a question. It's for the NPM and MCP security folks. I'm about to publish source 74 NPM adapter packs plus an MCP server. What should I harden first? More context on Discord. Which channel is the go-to for this? Oh, that's interesting. What is the right channel? What is the right channel? I mean, we do have the cyber. Man, we have a lot of channels. do have this channel. This is the cybersecurity one. I almost feel like Freddie. Oh, are you? Oh, sweet, man. You're watching Gilbert Strange. That's great. Oh yeah, no, linear algebra is very hard. It is extremely, especially when you get into the the stuff with the higher dimensions, and I forget the name of it. It's like these basis systems. I can't remember the. Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking, Colin. Yeah, I'm also thinking maybe there's like, oh, there's a new, oh. Oh, cool. Did I create this channel? Awesome. Uh, this, Freddie, this seems like a good. Yeah, once you get to eigen, yes, that's what I'm talking about, Colin. Is it's once you get to that stuff. There's another name that's more general than eigenvalues and eigenvectors. I can't remember what it's called now. I'd have to look it up. But that's where linear algebra starts getting really hard, in my mind. Like it's very easy. I think when people think of that linear algebra, they think, oh, it's just like matrices and vectors and stuff, and doing multiplication and stuff like that. That part I think is very easy. Uh, where it starts to get not necessarily hard but complex is the eigenvalues, the eigenvectors, the Jacobians, the Hessians. Is you really are, because now it's a fusion of like calculus and linear algebra together, and it's just, it takes a while, I think. And this is one of those things where, this is why I think I said I went through Doctor Strange's. By the way, I love to say that because reasons. I would show you guys something if I could find. Hold on. When I say I'm a super nerd, I'm not kidding. Okay, like I am a super nerd, and there's a few Marvel superheroes that I absolutely love. Silver Surfer is one. I would show you the Silver Surfer guy. He's actually much bigger, but he's being used to hold up this backdrop over there, so I can't get him. But my second favorite Marvel person probably is this guy. And as many of you know, this is Doctor Strange. But then the other Doctor Strange is the guy that teaches linear algebra. So, yes, super nerd. Uh, okay, so going back to Freddie's question, I think Freddie, a good place for it is probably in the AI and ML. That's, I think Colin's right about that. Okay, let's go through some of the IG chatter and see what I can find. So see what we can find. Yes, so we do live streams, and we broadcast to, yeah. So right now we're broadcasting to Insta, Kick, TikTok, Twitch, and the main GTT. But I want us to also be live streaming from the Trek channel as well. No, thank you, Freddie. I mean, it's awesome having you here. I think you're adding quite a bit. And there's a few others that I want to live stream, like X, I guess, can do it. I think maybe even Substack can do it. So can Facebook, but we're at the limit of channels that we can restream to right now without going to like a business account. This is also the reason why we have to have some kind of sustainable income for GTT, simply to keep all the subscriptions and stuff that we have to pay for to make all this work. So right now we have like the light edition of Restream, and that allows us to broadcast, but it only lets us broadcast, I think, to 5 different social medias. The moment you add 6, it's not a slightly more expensive. I think it's like a 10x more expensive. So I think right now it's like $20 a month for Restream. And when I try to add a new channel to upgrade to the business plan, just adding one more channel, $200 a month. Now, admittedly, I think that this is a pretty smart plan on Restream. I mean, it's a little mercenary, but I think I understand why they're doing it. I think from their view, it's that if you are doing social stuff and you're up to 5 different social media stuff, then maybe you're still kind of in the early days or whatever. But the moment you start streaming to more than 5 channels, it's kind of like, okay, you probably are a little bit bigger now. And so you can afford, instead of $20 a month, $200 a month. And I don't know that we're ready yet to pay $200 a month just for one product. But if you love GTT and you want to help so we can restream to more than 5 channels, please join the GTT YouTube membership. I'll drop a link to it now. This is completely voluntary. If you can't afford it, don't worry about it. But if you can, it's over here-ish somewhere. And I think they were asking Colin, and I think me as well, for this buy me a coffee or thingamabob. I haven't set it up. I haven't had time for that, but maybe I'll set it up some point. That or like a Patreon. So then you guys can do that too, if you're in a position to do that. But if you're not, then don't do it. My goal is to make the content basically as free and as accessible to everybody. And so I know some of you, the job market is really tough and you're trying to keep your head above water. So you should be able to get as much of the stuff for free as possible. But then some of you, it's actually a really interesting community we have with GTT. Is we have like full run of the gambit here. And we have some people that are literally, I don't know that we have like the super wealthy people on GTT, but we have a few centimillionaires. So people that these are ultra high net worth individuals, something like that, where they've got quite a bit of disposable income. And so if you're in that category, yeah, please feel free to become a member and do the ultra thing, which is like $5 a month. And then each one of these things gets us to the point. We get enough of those, then we can cover the $200 a month and we can restream to 10 different channels or something. And this is also part of the reason why we kind of have to do sponsors at this point. The good news, though, is I think that we're starting to become so, well, hey, thanks, W. Appreciate it, man. That's awesome. I think that, yeah, there's another thing that I want to do too, but also they're gaming us. Check this out. There's this thing on Insta. I didn't know about this until very recently, and I don't even think they broadcast it until you get like a certain number of subs. There's a sub tier on Instagram where after you get a certain thing, like I think if you get close to 20,000 or something, it unlocks itself. And what it allows you to do is when you drop links, they actually become active links. And what I mean by that is you can click on it directly. So for example, down here where I just dropped this thing, this is not a link. It's just text. And so you can still try to figure out a way to copy it and paste it in another thing, but it doesn't come off as a link. If I upgrade our Instagram account, which again costs some non-trivial amount of money per month, then anytime I drop a link, it'll actually be a link. And so each one of these is like more ways that they're trying to get you to pay more money. And all of them make sense, right? Like I'd love to do the restream thing. I'd love to have the links on IG, but we're still building and stuff. So we've got to pick and choose our battles. But your support is deeply appreciated. That's for any of you that are wondering, like, so what does the membership do? Where does that go? It'll go to things like that. And there's a slew of things like that. Okay. Have sounds. I don't think I've heard of tryhackme.com. I'll check it out. No, I just want this, and I want to put it here. One other thing that I want to share is I've been hacking with the dashboard, trying to do a whole bunch of additional things. Again, at some point, maybe in June, what I'll do is I'll walk you guys through my experience and how I'm doing the collab code. And I am getting there. It's still not the shape that I want it to be. Like the actual software architecture is too... it's still a little bit spaghetti-ish. It's not up to my standard, but it is like there's very strong separation now between the data portion and the actual operational portion, which I really like. So basically all of the data related things to the control center are completely separate from the code. And that's critical because, as I've mentioned, I'm going to open source this, but I want it to be customizable. And with that customizable aspect, I want all of you to be able to essentially redesign the layout so it says basically whatever you want it to say. So you can set up each one of these windows to whatever you want it to be, and so on and so forth. But yeah, it's getting there. Like for example, I have this input window, but now I have also this output window that I can scroll in. This is keeping This is a new, yeah, it's customizable and savable. So I'm building in the actual iteratively refinable setup. So now it has a full logging system, and the logging system is keeping track of all the AI integration. So you know now exactly what you sent to the AIs, exactly when you did. I'm going to start probably storing the AI feedback, and then I'm going to set it up so it's integratable with any AI system, not just Claude. But yeah, it's gonna, and I think if I press this, yeah, so see there's like this built-in help system. So it's basically telling you all the shortcuts that's got into it. It's like stuff is kind of getting to where it needs to be. Awesome, Chill. Uh, Great to have you, man. All right, let's continue through the IG stuff. Oh yeah, so Ryan's asking, I wonder if it has something to do with how YouTube is trying to cut down on AI content. I think that's entirely possible. I think, oh yeah, the dashboards I think can be very helpful. I think the other thing that's going on is I will openly be honest about my views on things that Google's doing. And this is maybe where I have gotten on their list of, I don't know if we want to promote this guy. And I called them out very openly on how I think that the forced Gemini Nano download through Chrome is a terrible idea. One, minimally, that should be it should be an opt-in. You should have to agree to this. And right now it's invisible. And the potential for the cyber risk of this is enormous. I mean, it's I don't know how they're not putting two and two together here. It's very much like what Cursor did with the disabling workplace security. It's just really not in the best interest of the world. It's just in the best interest of Cursor, so it would be more frictionless. It's the same thing here. Is this automatic download of this Gemini Nano SLM is not in the best interest of people. It's in the best interest of Google. And it's really interesting because I tried to promote that video and Google shut it down. They basically came up with all these excuses that made no sense. One, they said I was spreading misinformation. Okay. It's highly documented all over the internet. It's absolutely true what they're doing. There's no misinformation there. Then another time, check this out. They were saying that I'm trying to influence US elections. What? What are you talking about? How does talking about Google forcing SLM downloads have anything to do with US elections? There's no correlation there. So literally, they're just coming up with excuses to not make what's going on in the channel visible. And I don't love that. They're very much, I think, trying to game me. But it's, one, not going to shut us up. It's just going to make me more excited to go after these types of things and get the word out. And secondly, what I also love is we are not just restricted to YouTube anymore. That Insta, I don't know if you guys can see this, the big thing that I tend to care about with these things is it's not the numbers, guys, that matter. It's the growth percentage that matters. That's the thing really to keep an eye on. And if you look at Insta, the part that is probably the most interesting to me is the per month growth rate for Insta, just the visibility that we're getting completely organically, is we're nearing a doubling effect we're not quite there yet, but like we're at this 67% growth in the month of May. And the month of May is not over. Like this isn't a 30-day rolling window. It starts fresh each month. So we're already at almost 70% growth on Insta in just the month of May. So just do the math. Like if we maintain this doubling effect on IG for 5 months, this number becomes very big. And the reason why this is helpful is I don't really care that much about the raw numbers, but it's more just making the information available to people. So if Google wants to play games about trying to limit the voice of these things, Insta is probably not. And so we can play the same games that they're playing. Is that if Meta wants to limit the voice, because I start picking on Meta, then we have YouTube to promote that. If YouTube and Google want to shut it down, we have Insta, and so on and so forth. So this is part of the reason to be very disparate and have many different avenues of getting the voice out. Is any one of them can try to push back on us and shut our voice down because they don't want people to know the truth. And we've got multiple outlets. So it's that whole not all of our eggs in one basket kind of thing. Okay. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Stubborn beliefs. Uh-huh. Hey, Labyrinth. It's good to see you, man. What's up? Gravy. Oh, sweet. Gravy's starting with Python, then moving to C++. Oh, the CSIS private repo. I really want to get to this, but I think for this stream, we might want to wrap it up. Maybe I'll save that for the next one. But I'll try to start out the next live with this. And it's hilarious. I mean, I think it's hilarious, but I think it's also like, it's so downright stupid that I almost feel like it's a honeypot. It almost feels like it's a trick because the ridiculousness of how bad it is. Yeah, that's great to know, W. Yeah, I'm learning about all this stuff too. Yeah, and so right with Twitch, that's another really good one is that we could be doing with Twitch, and like obviously Twitch is very small, and I actually think that's kind of fun. But then keep in mind, Twitch is owned by Amazon, and so each one of these guys is like controlled by some bigger monopoly or it's like an oligarchy. Am I using the right word here? Something like this. But basically, it's like a collection of huge companies behind almost all of these, except maybe Kick. I'm not sure. But then these guys at Kick, they have these gambling things that are built in. Anyway, yeah, and right, like LinkedIn is Microsoft. So we just the hidden connections of, yeah, you guys know what I'm saying. Okay, cool. Lots of people joining. That's great. It seems like industry normalized F ups. 100%. All. 100%. Do I like Zed? I haven't actually played with Zed, and many people have brought it up to me. At some point, I will check it out and then start fiddling around. So, not no word on that yet, but I appreciate you raising it Other people have, and I'm going to eventually get around to doing a deep dive on it. I've heard very good things. Do I sleep ever? No, basically. I There was a time actually when I would sleep kind of like a normal human being back when I worked at Intel, but then ever since we created Merly, and I think actually the bigger thing is once I really started going hardcore with GTT, I think my sleep patterns started to shift where I sleep basically 4 or 5 hours a night, kind of tops. And it's strange because I think that my body has gotten to the point to where it, I kind of can't sleep longer than that. So I will wake up and then I just can't get back to sleep. So then I'm just like, all right, I guess work starts now. That's why we're on so late tonight. Is I was up at 5 a.m. yesterday, and then the doggy and I went for some runs. I was organizing and catching up on all the things, and then I was just exhausted. I think by 5 p.m. something like that. So I just crashed big time, and yeah, woke up around. I guess maybe I fell asleep around 6 p.m. and then got up around 10 p.m. and here we are. Maybe it was 11, something like that. Anyway, can you check it out? Focuscloud.dev. Okay. I'll add this to my list. And I'll check out some of these things offline. And if you guys are sending me down any of these phishing sites, I'm going to be real upset. So don't do that. But I think most of you, or almost all of you, are good-natured. But there are certain people that are that have started to make it their life goal to troll me. And so I have to be a little careful. I don't mind it. It's like they say that if nobody hates you, you just aren't trying hard enough. So clearly I must be trying hard enough now because I've got a group of people that literally I think they're starting to dedicate their life to just going after me. And the reason why I say that is they're literally following all of the content so they can try to make their trolling even more relevant as they're like making it's almost like they have their what, how do they say this? I am living in their mind rent free. So yeah, it's kind of amusing. Uh, hmm Oh yeah, that's great, Matt. That you have been catching up on this stream. Yeah, yeah, and I agree with you about the IG thing. Yeah, I like Goju Trek also because I mean there's a duality to it. So first, as you know, big surprise, I love Star Trek. Uh, I no matter what Star Trek it is, I generally will watch it, and I have some that I like more than others. Like I was a huge fan at one point of Next Generation. I really liked Patrick Stewart as Captain Picard, and I just liked the general team and the flow of that. I thought that was just really cool. But then, you know, I watched Deep Space Nine. I did actually at some point recently buy the whole original series, like however many seasons, and started going through all those episodes. And then all the movies and things. So the Trek part is it's a little homage to a Star Trek. It seemed kind of fitting. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Happy Memorial Day for you guys as well. You're alone on campus, totally silent. Yeah. That was part of the reason why I wanted to do marathon streams this weekend. And so at least we've got one now that it's, I don't know if it's a marathon, but 2.5 hours is not bad. And I hope to do maybe another one later this evening or tomorrow evening or whatever. But I must do the Hostinger, the Hostinger VOD, because they're getting a little impatient with me now. So that's up next. I'm going to dedicate most of today to recording that, mostly offline. So we'll get them to be happier. I also think the timing of that is, it's pretty much become a very critical point to get people trained on how to use VPSs so they can sandbox things. Yeah, Matt, absolutely. We'll get a chance to look at that. And I haven't checked out the Kanban thing. I think I saw a link that you shared, and it looked pretty interesting. But yeah, it's on my list of things. I appreciate you sharing and teaching us about this. I'm like super oversubscribed at the moment, but things should hopefully die down a little bit more in June. Cool. Users saying that uh, I think users saying basically using Python for simple automation. I 100% agree with that. I think Python's an excellent tool for uh, scripting and smaller kind of tasks. In fact, my first experience with Python was just that. It was doing some sort of it was doing some compiler transformation stuff from one form to another in Python. Yeah, this is exactly what I'm talking about, Colin. This change. This is, I think, far better. The if status is equal to active status. And I actually, just so you know, I invert this when I do this. I tend to try to put my constants on the left-hand side. So I'll do something like this. And the reason why I do that is if you accidentally leave off the equals, because active status is a const, this will result in a compile time error. Whereas the other way, if you accidentally leave off the second equal, it will do an assignment. And this is an easy way to have a silent error, an assignment that's really hard to catch. And if you haven't experienced this before, wait till you do. It's can be a little bit of a pain to track down. Yes, that's one of the big reasons. I think it's at least two main reasons to do this, Colin, as far as the constants. One, when it changes, and oftentimes software that's being used is software that's changing. So it makes it easier to change it, update it, whatever. But it's also that it makes the code far more readable. Is that in the status is equal to one, what does one mean here? It's not entirely clear. But if you have status is equal to active status, this is much clearer, I think, because you can say, oh, what does that mean? It's saying, is the status active versus inactive? Yeah, and this is absolutely like pretty bad advice, is having these hard-coded variables is just, this is kind of, in production quality software, you generally don't do this type of thing. It's really bad form. Yeah. Yeah. So that's one good step, Colin, is having these as like const, and you have like a const file where all these are defined. The better way to do this, in my mind, is it's not actually even in the code. It's in things like JSON files or XML files where they're read in externally. And part of the reason for doing this is you can then change the values of things completely independent of changing the code. And that can be very helpful when you're like shipping binaries and you don't have the source available because you don't want it to be available. Then you can change the values of the constants in the data files, and if they're in JSON, right, it's like human readable, all that. It gets all these good properties with it. Yeah, and even stuff like this, having it as a public static final, yeah, that's like a good step in the right direction. But then going even further is having all the data values be in. So this is the way that I'm designing this guy is, so instead of taking it this far, I go even a step further, is it's completely decoupled, complete decoupling of data versus operation. And then it becomes maximally flexible. And in ways that, if it's, I kind of think of it as, if it's stuff in the code, it should be operations, and data, which is just data, should not be really present in the code. It's going to make it much easier for you to change things. It's far more flexible. Everything already has to have a name, like even in the JSON file. So these are all kind of, each one of those is leveling up to make the code better and better and better. Annie's saying, glad you educated me in the last stream against the mentality. Excuse me. Us noobs all have quick update. It feels good versus, oh yeah, the update of it feels good versus reality. And we're all lab rats of the company. Awesome. I don't know anything about West Wing, but I hear it's a pretty good show. Yeah, I think that, excuse me, I think that Hostinger, and I haven't gotten too far with them yet, I will shortly. I think a lot of it is meant to be terminal driven, basically CLI driven. And the way that I use things like Claude Code is full CLI. So I still look at the code, but mostly I function outside of IDEs. And part of the reason for that is the way I kind of think about code moving forward in the future is a lot of the code is in flight before you get to the point to where it's going to be locked down. And so working directly with the code all the time is maybe not as fast as it can be if you're just CLI and you're kind of natural languaging it. But then once you get to a hardened point, the way I kind of view it is the looking at the code will give you insight into like patterns, general structure of things. And then once you see that the structure of things is kind of going off the rails, then you give guidance to course correct the structure. And it's for that reason that I think the traditional way of developing software, where it's in an IDE and you're editing code directly, is not exactly the way I think it's going to be for the future. I think it's going to be more of, essentially, I think the CLIs allow you to present things related to code in a very high level conceptual way. And so you don't get bogged down in all the details until it becomes critical that you need to look at those details. I kind of think of it as like this. You're coming up with a grocery list or something, but it's distributed with all these different people that are working on it. And so you don't need to see all the different pieces as they're being formed. But once you get the actual grocery list where you're about ready to go, excuse me, to the grocery store, at that point, it does make sense. Hold on a second. I need to see if I can find those cough drops. No. Okay. I have no idea where I put them, so I'll get them after the stream. Yeah, Freddie, I'm kind of the same way. I'm often living in the terminals, and then I check the code as I move forward. Interesting. I don't think I've heard of this, Freddie, but let me add it to. Oh no, I think I accidentally deleted some of the other stuff I wanted. Give me 1 second, guys. Okay. I was looking for my cough drops. Couldn't find them, but I got some gum, and this is kind of helping. Okay. Come on, buddy. Oh, and guys, I started watching this new show on Netflix. It's called, what is this thing called? The Burrows? Well, let's see. The Burrows? Yeah, this show. I think maybe it just came out. I'm not sure, but I just started watching it, and I quite like it. Yeah, I guess it's 95% Rotten Tomatoes, 7.6 IMDb. If you like sci-fi and you like kind of cerebral, lighthearted, but then has moments of getting into kind of some deep philosophical things, which is 100% my things that I really like, I think you will probably really like this show. So if you have Netflix, yeah, check it out. All right. Would love for any of you GTT pros to take a look at the Madhu framework. Excellent. Oh, did this update the... Okay, cool. I've got it on my list now. Okay. All right, we saw this. We're talking about this. Oh, oh, thanks. Thanks, W. Appreciate it. That's one of the things I really strive for is I don't always get this right, but it's really important to me to try to explain things in a way that really makes sense. And I'm of the mindset that if you deeply understand something, then you can explain it to anyone. You can explain it to a fifth grader. You can explain it to a high schooler. You can explain it to an undergrad. You can explain it to a PhD. You can explain it to a professor. Basically hit the entire stack. And I remember back in the day when I think I didn't fully grok things. Because I didn't fully understand, I didn't have like a true deep understanding. I couldn't explain it at all those levels because I didn't really understand. And now what I do is, and this is part of the reason why I teach, is teaching really forces you, or at least the level that I teach at, is it kind of forces you to really deeply understand what you're talking about. Because my students will want to deep dive on potentially any topic that I bring up. And I love that. I love that it forces me to have a really deep and rich understanding of things, not just a peripheral, superficial understanding of it. And a big thing is this gets magnified significantly on GTT because all of you are bringing up different things. And so this is sort of one of my big hacks, as I think I mentioned, is selfishly, one of the things that's the most important for me is growth. And so all of you guys are sharing new things that I would have otherwise like not been exposed to or not heard of or not thought deeply about. And then because I do really deeply care and I'm super curious, every time you will mention these things, it then gives me more stuff specifically to look at. And so in some sense, it may feel as though I'm teaching. The truth is, you guys are teaching me. And I'm not placating you and I'm not trying to flatter. I'm trying to be real. Is that this is one of the biggest hacks. I was talking with Kunle Alakutin from Stanford, who's sort of a very famous, well-known professor and happens to be somebody that I know and have deep respect for. And he was doing some really interesting work at some conference I was at. And I was asking him, or maybe I was saying that I was just super impressed with all of the things that Kunle is doing. And he said back to me, my secret is it has nothing to do with me. It's that I work with and hire really amazing grad students. And those grad students end up teaching me more than I know or that I knew beforehand. And it's interesting too, because I think at first, sometimes people think that it's like, oh, you're just being humble. You know all the stuff, but you're just trying to share the credit. But the truth is, as you get to, I think, these types of interactions or sort of work behaviors, it really is true. Especially if you really have the growth mindset, it really is that your students end up teaching you more than you teach them. Or minimally, it's bidirectional. So either way, I freaking love it. So thank you, W. I love having you around. and really appreciate the kind words. Yeah, great having you, Chili. Okay. I think creators will conflate followers as growth, though. I like to see the comments more. There are plenty of micro influencers with a lot of followers, but low engagement. Otherwise, IG is still a top. Yeah, I've got very. I spent quite a bit of time thinking about this, as you might suspect, Colin, and it's tricky. I think that short content that is 60 seconds to 180 seconds, like the typical limit on shorts and reels, is very easy to get engaged in with those, and they have to be pretty hard hitting. You can't really have a lot of fluff. You need to kind of get right to the point. And I think it's great for getting early engagement. The problem that I have with it is, in many cases, it's still just a teaser. And so, like, for example, you were just talking about eigenvalues and eigenvectors. Can you imagine seeing a clip that's teaching you how to do eigenvalues or eigenvectors in 60 seconds or 3 minutes? It's probably almost impossible. And I'm of the mindset that you still need long form deep dives to be able to deeply process highly complex concepts and subject matter. But you can have shorter content that is bite size, so people can learn in these small incremental ways or get engaged in this. But this is the outer shell, right? This is sort of like the teaser to the movie. You still kind of need to watch the movie in order to deeply understand things, but you can watch an abbreviated sort of cliff notes of it to get the essence of what it is that's going to be talked about. But the devil is oftentimes in the details. So I think of it as spheres of influence. There's like this core center, which is the deep thought long form, and then slowly it kind of pans out more and more. And each of those are different for different reasons. The shorts and the clips, I think, will always be important because people are very busy and they don't necessarily have an hour for the long form stuff. On the other hand, the long form stuff is likely the stuff that's going to teach you how to do things for real. For example, the Hostinger video is probably going to be 5 to 30 minutes long. Let's say 10 to 30 minutes long, because there's so many steps involved and there's so many different pieces that I need to explain to get it set up right. Anyway, regardless, I think the key thing is just continuing to have as many channels of engagement, and then being open to the idea that we don't necessarily know the answer, or there isn't one fixed answer. It's like it's a nebula. There's a whole bunch of answers, and we kind of want to be everywhere in that nebula. Something like this. Okay, Jalisco's asking, which languages would you learn after Python but before C++? Yeah, great question. I definitely point something like Java or C# in there, before C++ because they're a little bit easier in that they have a lot of the beginnings of some of the super powerful things in C++, but they can shield you from some of the stuff that is extremely hard, like memory management and having to deal with raw pointers and things, because you just work kind of in a space of references. I have to think about this some more, but that's kind of my knee-jerk to let's go. Okay. Wait, what is this? Yeah, I absolutely. I've heard. I recall seeing something like this as well. Freddie, is this? Yeah, if you can't explain it simply, you simply don't understand. Uh, yeah, I love that. And generally speaking, when I will run into this quite a bit, is I'll try to explain it and then I won't be able to explain it as clearly. And then it will make me realize, oh, you thought you had this mastered Goju, but you really didn't. Otherwise, you would have been able to explain it well. And so now you know, so you need to go learn more and then try again. And then continue to just, it's all about the reps. Just continuing to level up and grow more and more and change your views and just try to make yourself small footsteps every day. Most critical thing in my mind. This is actually, just as a closing note, this is one of the reasons why I love thanks, William. Yeah, it's great to have you here. A smart way to push oneself. Yeah, 100%. So the small footsteps every day. This literally has been one of the things that I live by. And in some ways, this is one of the things I love about doing streams or doing GTT is I get to see that I'm making small footsteps forward every day. And somehow, at least for me, it's sort of like a dopamine hit. Is every time I get one thing done, I feel like awesome. I got another point of evidence or another thing to add to my list, and yeah, it's like a confidence booster. Or if it's a thing that's helping establish that you're moving in the right direction. Anyway, I think that's it for this morning, tonight. I'm going to now sign off. And on vectors, what do you mean by vectors, Chili? Do you mean like vectors in programs? Do you mean vectors in mathematics? Do you mean vectors sort of like linear algebra? Oh, that's interesting. I'm going to do what I never wanted to do, learn MATLAB backwards and forwards. Awesome. W saying, I had something that came up as a project after a session I had with GGL Gem. Could it be legit? I'm not sure I know what that is, W. And maybe we can continue on the Discord. Yeah, maybe if we drop it in the tech discussion or whatever this is related to. William saying, short, small, raw, truthful, power-hitting impact, baby steps. Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Yeah, and great to have you, William. And keep in mind, there's a Discord. I'll drop it in just for you, my friend, because I think we dropped it in before you arrived. I'll drop it one last time down here. So you guys are welcome to join. Everybody's welcome to join the Discord, and it's always free and growing community of just pretty awesome people. All right, folks, I think that wraps it for right now. I'm going to get to work on some Hostinger stuff, and I'll probably circle back later. We should end after the stream. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. There should be like a post-stream decompression, debrief channel. Yeah, maybe. Oh, Vercel. We've spoken with Vercel, or we've spoken about Vercel quite a bit on various things, especially related to the recent hack. But yeah, we can definitely chat about that some more. So thanks everybody for joining. And as always, keep going and keep growing. We'll talk soon.